Hey, welcome to the instant reaction to Colin Cowherd's podcast with Mike Silver. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Coach Noah Johnston. I didn't know what we were going to talk about today, and then that podcast dropped, and it was about a lot of things, but there was a solid 12 minutes where they were talking nothing but Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, and there was so much information that that's all we're going to talk about the entire show. And before we start, parts we'll agree with, parts we'll disagree with. It's a sports conversation. I want to say that Mike Silver is a good friend of mine, and he's actually been very helpful in my career. A few years ago, when I had nothing going for me, I asked him to just sit and have lunch with me in Davis, and he absolutely did. He would take really great guy, family friend, and I am loyal to him. That being said, I'm going to disagree with certain things, conclusions that he's come to, but it's in a good spirit. So Mike,
also I noticed is he will actually respond to people like in his
great guy
on Twitter. So just not just talking about Grant, like he'll respond to just regular. If you tweet at him, he might respond to you.
Not just a great guy, but one of the more connected journalists in the country, sports journalists in the football journalists in the country. He's been doing this since before I was born. So shout out to Mike. All right. There's like 6 different things that I wrote down as big pieces of news that came from this 12 minutes, starting with this. Colin Cowherd and Mike Silver both said that they had sources. They even said, do we have the same source? And we're going to talk about who that source might be later. They said basically that the Niners are concerned about Trey Lance. Colin Cowherd got very specific. He said that his delivery aesthetically is ugly, that he's rebuilding his delivery, that he gets arm fatigue, that he puts so much effort into throwing the football. It's not an easy throw, that he actually needs days off in between throwing. This is all stuff that Colin Cowherd said. Also that the Niners are worried about his accuracy. And then Silver went on and said, well, I mean, there's evidence, like the fact that they wanted to have a Trey Lance package and they scrapped it. The fact that they didn't replace Jimmy Garoppolo with Lance after starting 3-5. This is all stuff that they said, buy or sell it in your eyes.
I'll buy some of it, right? I think we've both talked kind of at length about his throwing motion, and
I called it funky.
Yeah, he doesn't throw a pretty ball. That's true. It's a wobbly ball. I think you said about talking about how the great quarterbacks throw a beautiful ball, and you had questions of whether or not he could become one of those great ones, because you can't think of a great quarterback where you're like, wow, it's kind of an ugly ball, right? Like they all pretty much.
I guess Peyton Manning would be the one.
But even if you look
no one's confusing Trey Lance with Peyton Manning, they're very different.
Well, but also I think people think Peyton Manning later in his career. If you watch Peyton Manning, he was throwing spirals early in his career. Like,
true.
He had the neck issue, and then he was throwing an ugly ball.
Good
So I think you talk about that. So I agree with that part. The other part about why they made the switch at 3-5, or didn't make the switch at 3-5. I think that had more to do with them just, or even players coming to them just like, why are we keep going back and forth between these two quarterbacks? Let's go with Jimmy and go like that. And then also, right, he was injured. Trey Lance was injured, right? He had a pinky issue. That's why Shanahan basically used him as a running back.
There's that.
Right, and there's that. So I'll buy the stuff about the ugly ball, but the other stuff, I don't think so. What'd you say?
Arm fatigue.
The arm fatigue. I've never heard.
First time we've heard this either. Like,
I've
what?
never heard of. I've never in coaching football, and again, I coach high school, so I've never heard of arm fatigue. And I've been on teams where we basically had one kid that basically could throw the football, and he threw for everything. He threw an offense, and then when we did first team defense, he would switch over, he would go on the other. So this is a guy that's throwing all the time. Never heard of. Now, as a younger kid, I've never heard of arm fatigue. I don't know. I don't know if this if maybe what happened was Trey Lance had some arm soreness and it kept him out of practice for a couple days, and then they're just now someone's repeating this and saying, oh well, he missed days because of arm fatigue, just because he had one bout of soreness, or and the other thing, he might have had arm fatigue from having to. Didn't he say he had to change his throwing motion and adjust for the broken pinky, right? Or the index finger. I'm sorry, index finger. So that might have happened when he broke the index finger, and it might have been a result of that broken index finger and him having to change his throwing motion and because of it.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Look, what Cowherd said, I'm not going to dispute any of it. These guys clearly talked to someone high up in the organization. Aesthetically ugly delivery, yeah, I call it funky. Arm fatigue, I can't speak to it, but watching him throw, I've never felt like some people say, man, it's just effortless the way he throws, or it just comes, it explodes out of his hands. That's not Trey. Trey's very effortful in the way he throws. Like you can almost hear him grunt when he throws. And it's commendable. I mean, he could put a lot of mustard on it, but I think maybe that's contributing to some soreness. If you throw really hard, maybe you're going to be a little sore. Maybe he should ice his shoulder after he throws. I don't know. It's a baseball trick. Or maybe he just needs to take a little bit off sometimes. I mean, these are things you can work on as a 22-year-old. It's not a deal breaker. Worried about his accuracy? Yeah. But, if Colin Cowherd had been at minicamp or asked anyone that was, they'd know that he just really was extremely accurate at minicamp. And, D'Amico Ryan spoke about it. A lot of people spoke about it. The thing that Silver said, his conclusions, though, like, first of all, like the Lance package went away, and that indicated concern. It wasn't successful. It wasn't adding anything to the offense, like him coming in and being a running back 3 times a game. And it seemed pretty clear that the locker room was heavily against it. So why continue with it? And then the fact that he didn't replace Jimmy. I mean, I was campaigning for it throughout the season, but I think from Kyle's perspective, like he didn't prepare Trey to start last year. He gave 95% of the first team reps in camp to Jimmy. And to bring in Trey would be waving the white flag on the season because he wasn't prepared for it. He's 21 years old, hadn't gotten the reps, a lot to ask. I still felt that he'd be better than Jimmy Garoppolo, given all of that. But this is a different situation. He's getting the reps. And, I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo is starting week 1, then Silver's right. But I don't think he will be. And that brings into question a lot of Silver's conclusions.
Yeah, I think didn't he say like one of the things he was comparing him to Josh Allen and said it's not often that you get a 55% when he's talking about accuracy 55% passer that then turns into Josh Allen is able to improve his accuracy that much. But I don't believe where is this notion that Trey Lance is inaccurate coming from? Like I don't. Didn't he had he completed 57% of his passes last year in 2 games. So you can't really extrapolate that out 2 games amongst an entire season. I mean, that's not fair. So then you got to look at his college, and he wasn't.
Also, real quick, the Josh Allen thing. He completed 53% of his passes year 1, 58 year 2, 69 year 3, and then 63 year 4. So he's only done it once. I mean, 3 out of the 4 years, he was like below average in completion.
Right, and he started out with 53. Trey Lance completed 50. Trey Lance completed 57. And I don't know if you look at it, but what did he complete in the Texans game? Because you kind of throw that
damn near 70.
Yeah, you can kind of throw the Arizona one out, but then if you look at his college stats, he completed like 66% of his pass. I think Josh Allen was in the 50s in college, so like not the same. Okay,
not the same at all. Not the same. So I think these concerns. I mean, maybe the Niners are just. To me, this is just the Niners being nervous before taking a leap of faith on a young guy, and I don't know why they're expressing these concerns to Colin Cowherd and Mike Silver off the record, but they seem to be doing that. So fine, whatever. It just seems to me that maybe Colin and Silver built it up a little bit to be a little bit more concerning than it really is. Like, I think we knew these things already. The stuff about the arm fatigue is, I guess we'll see in training camp. I didn't notice it in training. I watched him throw every day in training camp last year. I didn't see him.
Grant, maybe ask him during training camp. It's like, do you ever get arm fatigue?
That's a fair question, man. A lot of people are talking about arm fatigue. I don't even know what that means. I'm guessing it means soreness. Does that happen? And
have you ever had to sit out practice because of your arm soreness or arm fatigue?
Yeah. Does it affect you in any way? That's a fair question.
Yeah.
Amtod99 says Colin's logic is that there was less noise and less people saying how great Mahomes and Herbert were, but the reason people hype up Trey is to defend from hate.
I don't. I think what people are putting, like, he doesn't have to be Mahomes or Herbert. Like it'd be ideal, right? If he's like that, but he just has to be a little bit better than Garoppolo.
Is it fair to say that Kyle also does not have great conviction in the quarterback position? I mean, he's constantly waffling between two options. He's not like Andy Reid. Andy Reid was 100% behind Donovan McNabb for a long time. Then he was 100% behind Alex Reid and then Alex Smith and then Patrick Mahomes. He never was like, well, I got these two guys. Let's see who works out. Kyle's like that. So I just feel like it's a different nature. I mean, when has Kyle ever been super enthusiastic about his starting quarterback? Ever. Kirk was not his starting quarterback. Ever.
Yeah.
It was his backup. He loves his backup. I'm just saying. Couple more comments and then we'll move on. The regular Ryan says, didn't Gabbert start 2015 because Cap had dead arm? Cap was coming off shoulder surgery. So maybe Jimmy's going to be the one with arm fatigue this offseason. I'd like to see. Arian A says, Colin used to praise Trey a ton last season. Ever since the rumor goes Lance broke up with his daughter, he started talking smack. Trust fam, all smoke. I was just looking that up before the show started. When did they break up? Can anyone tell me that? When was the timeline on the breakup?
I remember when they were friends and Colin was promoting Trey Lance and he was all about Trey Lance.
I gotta say, Cowherd and Silver had very little nice things to say about Lance. What they said was he's extremely intelligent, he's very athletic, and he throws hard. To me, when you're talking about a quarterback, that's patronizing. The second two things a lot of people feel don't translate to the NFL. And the first thing is being like, well, he's really smart. Yeah. It's just that he's an athlete. It's not going to work. Like, I don't know. So that's the nicest thing they could say about Trey Lance in this thing. That Niner guy says the source of the arm fatigue is Jimmy. LOL. Who is saying this is the question? They heard it somewhere or they wouldn't say it. This is all bull. Well, we're going to hypothesize on who the source or sources might be at the end. But we're going to make you wait for that. Voice ad agency says, I think it's fair for us to argue that Lance is definitely more accurate than Jimmy Garoppolo in clutch moments. I'll take my chances with the kid.
Yeah. Let's talk. I think maybe I'm not going to say Lance is like perfectly accurate. I mean, he'll miss, but it's not like I wouldn't say he's inaccurate, right? I mean,
I don't think so. No. I mean, in that game against Arizona where he had a low completion percentage, I think he had 3 drops, and I think he had 4 passes knocked down at the line of scrimmage. Now, maybe some of those batted down passes are partially on him, but it's one game, and it explains why his completion percentage was much lower in that one than the other 2 appearances he had. The one,
right. I think the biggest issue, at least last year, was the inaccuracy over the middle. Over the middle where Jimmy excels, but in the other places, I thought he was pretty accurate. I mean, and then the other gripe we've talked is the wobbly ball, which I think hurt him.
Well, I think what concerned me last year was not just it was when he missed over the middle, he missed high, and to me, it was like, well, you're going to throw a lot of picks, and then also it was just throwing short passes way too hard. To me, in camp, he wasn't doing that, and he doesn't.
Yeah, looked like it was by all accounts, it looked like it was corrected. Now we'll see, as training camp comes along, but.
Okay, so we've talked for 13 minutes. We still have 5 more things to digest from this 12-minute segment. That was wonderful. Thank you, Mike and Colin. So both Colin Cowherd and Mike Silver, clearly think the 49ers will hedge their bets and keep Jimmy Garoppolo on this team. They pointed out how, Andy Reid was all in with Patrick Mahomes, got rid of Alex Smith right away, and built around Mahomes. The Niners haven't done that. They keep saying it's because they intend to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe a trade market will materialize at some point. But as long as he's on the team, it's hard to interpret it any other way than the Niners giving themselves a safety net in the sense that, let's say Trey Lance falls on his face and it doesn't work out the first month of the season or he gets hurt. Well, you got Jimmy G waiting there, in bubble wrap, supposedly waiting to get traded. Oh, he's still on the team, though. Guess he can play. Yeah. Or if Trey Lance tears it up, then they could say, you know what, we didn't need you at all. But it's at least a safety net. What do you think? Do you think that he's going to be on this team week 1? Because I do. I think they're going to hedge. I don't think they're going to have a quarterback competition.
No.
He's going to practice. But I think he'll be around. He'll be on the team. And they'll say he's rehabbing. His arm isn't ready. He's coming back. He hasn't thrown in a while. Yeah, I mean, the trade market's going to be there once he's 100%. He's just not 100% healthy. That's what they're going to say. That's
It makes the thing about why I'm having so much trouble, Chris. Doesn't really make sense, Grant. It doesn't like it. And Colin even said it on his podcast. He said like you can't have that guy in the building you can't. And I agree with that. You can't
unless you want him to start.
Right. For Trey Lance,
the Niners are going to try to get cute here.
Yeah. So. Is this? I can't remember. Is this a topic?
What they could do? They could keep him essentially out of the building. Like, dude, don't go to meetings. Don't go to practice. Don't talk to the press. We just need you to throw because you haven't thrown in 5 months, and we're trying to get you trade ready, and you got to build up your arm strength. So we're going to start off you throwing a ball, boys, 10 yards, 15 yards, extending it. I mean, I think they have to build up his arm fitness.
Will they John Wall him and just be like, just stay away, just
stay away.
You're on our
come
team
out here at 7 a.m. and throw before everyone's here, then leave. And come out here again at 7 p.m. and throw. And we'll give you ball boys, we'll give you the whole thing, but you don't need to work on timing with your receivers because you're not our quarterback. We want to put you in bubble wrap, get your arm built up, and then trade you. I mean, that's the number one goal. They can keep telling themselves it'll happen, but who knows what quarterback will get hurt week 1? There's always a few quarterbacks who get hurt.
And I think they also talked in a podcast. Would Jimmy G then would he request a trade or force the issue? But I think the issue is here, right? Well, the issue is here is he's not going to get the same amount of money at another place. So
he's cut me so I can't make $27 million this year. I think he'll, he might not be happy about it, but he's not going to because he's going to get $15 million less on the open market if he gets cut.
Right. Would you rather? For him, the question would be: Would you rather start somewhere and play, or get $15 million more dollars?
And again, the Niners aren't going to say they're hedging. They're going to say, no, we're all in with Trey. Trey's our guy. It's just that we're going to trade Jimmy because a market does exist, and so he just needs to throw. Just because he's healthy enough to start throwing doesn't mean that he has the full capabilities in his arm, and we're going to build that up before we deal him. And that process could take as long as they say it takes. Oh, we haven't traded him by week 1. We're still building that arm up. He's still getting there.
Another thing that Silver said in that podcast was in talking about Carolina, he said that one of the major they did have guys in that building, in the Carolina building, that really liked Jimmy Garoppolo, but they had major concerns about him coming off that shoulder surgery, which pretty much shut that whole.
I don't buy that. I sell that. I mean, from everything we heard when this surgery happened was that it was the least serious surgery you could possibly have, and that there's no question about him eventually getting back to 100%. So again, if this guy were Drew Brees, who did have a big time shoulder injury when he hit the market, teams would have still been interested as they were for Drew Brees. Right now, teams are looking at Jimmy like, no. No. And I was like, I don't see that changing. I don't see the BO getting the stink getting out of that one, but maybe it will. Anyway, I do see the Niners hedging here. They're going to say it's because they intend to trade him and that he's not healthy enough, and they're not going to just cut him because they're going to keep waiting and they have the cap space. But really, it's because they have no conviction in the quarterback position. It's the same group that thought Jimmy was a better bet than Tom Brady. It's the same group that saw no use in at least even scouting Patrick Mahomes. They don't know. They're scared to move on to Trey Lance. I totally believe that they're scared to move on to Trey Lance because they haven't proven they can win without Jimmy Garoppolo. And if, heaven forbid, it's a rough start for Trey in September, what's the locker room? How's the locker room going to react? How's the fans going to react? How the media going to react? How much, especially if they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo and he's, starting for Cleveland for $5 million a year playing well. I think they're afraid of that just because there's a 25% chance it could happen. So I think they're going to hedge and make sure it doesn't happen and say, oh, it's okay. We wanted to spend this money on Trey's backup. That was the plan.
The flip side of that is they should be equally afraid of the damage that Jimmy can do by just being around and halting Trey's development. So
let's talk about that.
They might inevitably cause what they're afraid of by keeping Jimmy on the roster.
Third item of business. Colin Cowherd interjected while Mike Silver was essentially making the case that Jimmy should still be their quarterback and say, I think they should trade Jimmy Garoppolo right now for a 6th round pick and be done with it. First of all, my instant reaction to that was, you still think you can get a 6th-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, no one wants that contract. To move Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the Niners would have to pick up some of the bill, which wouldn't make sense because his contract isn't guaranteed, and they'd be better off just cutting him or keeping him, not keeping him. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure they could get a 6th-round pick, but that's what Cowherd thinks. Just be done with it, because he said Trey can't take over the room as long as Jimmy's there, and I totally agree with that. So I don't know. I mean, I do think the Niners are probably going to hedge and try to keep Jimmy. I think it's a big mistake, and I think Cowherd's right. And even if they try to keep Jimmy out and have him just be like sort of rehabbing on the side, I mean, just the idea of Jimmy still being on that team is going to be a distraction.
Yeah, and then it might end up causing what they're afraid of, which is Trey Lance not being able to develop or not being able to command or lead this team, because everyone's saying, oh, well, Jimmy's here, he can do it. Right? He did it before. He got us to Super Bowl, got us to an NFC championship. So any sort of danger is any sort of failure or any sort of speed bump that Trey Lance hit, that roster, people on that roster are going to immediately start looking to Jimmy Garoppolo. And you can't have that on your team.
No, and even, again, I talked about this a few months ago, but this is what Jimmy could do. It's what probably I would do. I'm an asshole. Sorry. But what he could do is, Trey has a rough outing. Or even he wins, misses some throws. Misses a throw to Kittle.
I would have got you.
I would have got you. Or doesn't see Kittle open. Man, he's not throwing you enough. If I was out there, you'd be getting 10 targets a game. And what's that about?
Yeah.
He's costing you money. Debo, your numbers were better last year with me. But you say that quietly, I mean, he's the one. Trey's supposed to be the leader, but Jimmy's the one with the relationships in the locker room. All these players know him longer, better,
Like Mitchell.
Trey's like the new kid at school who's trying really hard to make everyone like him. He's like inviting them over to their house. He's letting them play their video games. He's like, hey, be my friend. But Jimmy literally is their friend.
You could see the difference in, remember the difference in when he took that podium for the first time, and it was like he was a completely different. And then he said last year's situation was a bit tough. Like, I didn't really have a feel of how I can react on the podium because of the situation that happened last year. So it does completely change your perspective as a quarterback and what he can do, what he can't do, how he handles the leadership position on the team, all that stuff. And then obviously, you could have Jimmy Garoppolo behind the scenes, saying things to certain players, and maybe that might not be him though. Who knows? But even if it wasn't Grant, like just the fact that he's there is going to cause players to think.
I agree. Like if he's at lunch, that's awkward. If he's at a team meeting, that's awkward. He can be on the team and he can be throwing, and the Niners can be cute and like hold out to try to trade him or whatever, or to keep him as a safety net in case Lance bombs or gets hurt. But he can't be in the facility. Can't be there. He just can't be there. He can be there early before people get there and late when people leave, but he can't be there. Otherwise, Trey's going to feel inhibited. Like, I can't be the leader. I can't talk. I can't be myself. Just his mere presence around other teammates will confuse people and will hurt Trey Lance's development. I
disagree in that I don't even think he can be on the roster. Like, there's just a fact that he's on the roster, that he's available, that he's an option. If he's
that's fine, but he can't be in the facility. He can't be in the cafeteria. Can't be in the auditorium. He's got to be on. He's not on the team. He's on the roster, but he's out with D Ford somewhere or further away. D Ford's on the team. Swear to God. I have multiple sources confirming this.
Yeah. He's still on the team.
Gross says, I went back and watched Steve Young highlights. He seemed to finish across his body like Trey does. Steve didn't always throw with a tight spiral either. That's true about the second part. I know what you're seeing. Go and watch JT O'Sullivan's video on throwing a spiral. He actually mentioned Steve Young specifically and said that the way Steve did it was when he got to the release point, he actually bounced his hand back up and got a lot of wrist action, as JT O'Sullivan pointed it. So that's the way he did it, and it was a way to get a real flick with his wrist, and I think that Steve probably got more of a flick than Lance does at this time. But that was Steve in his 30s, and I think he worked on that a great deal. Bryant says Jimmy wins Super Bowl as a backup. That's true. He is a proven Super Bowl backup quarterback. If Jimmy's your backup quarterback, you probably have like a 78% chance of winning the Super Bowl.
Depends what's his price point, though. Not at $27 million.
Russell James, here's $1. Thank you very much. Let's move on. We're only halfway through the things that they said. Okay, this one's about Mike Silver. Mike Silver got wild for a minute. He was making a case for why, because Colin Cowherd said, look, they should trade Jimmy Garoppolo right now for the 6th, be done with it. And he's like, Silver's like, let me present a counter argument. And he started saying the nicest things I've heard people say about anyone say about Jimmy in the longest time. It was so nice. I had to write it down. It was unreal. He says, you, as in the Niners, are constructed offensively to take advantage of Jimmy Garoppolo's unique gifts. As soon as he said the word unique, my ears picked up like, which are those? Handing off, unique gifts. He goes, incredible accuracy. Incredible accuracy. Willingness to hang in. The guts to deliver the ball in tight spaces. And the uncanny ability to do that accurately. Then he goes, Mike, I love you. Jimmy's not perfect. He does those things great, like elite. And when I was done listening to that, I told my wife, I said, you got to listen to what Mike Silver said about Jimmy Garoppolo. And I laid it all out. And she said, what quarterback is he talking about? I'm like, that's what I'm saying. That none of those things describe Jimmy Garoppolo. That described Drew Brees. He said he's not perfect. That's the worst thing you can say about Jimmy. He's not perfect, and he has 4 elite traits. If he had 4 elite traits, Trey Lance wouldn't be on this team.
Right.
They would have extended his contract. He'd be Drew Brees. You just described Mike. You just described Drew Brees. One of the 15 greatest quarterbacks of all time is what you just described here. Jimmy, he says he has the guts to deliver the ball in tight spaces. He has no choice because he can't throw deep. He won't throw outside the numbers. He has no choice but to force the ball into that little tennis court that he plays in. And, I mean, the guts, I could say he has no conscience throwing those passes, getting intercepted by linebackers. I'm getting worked up, but this actually was killing me.
His accuracy is he's accurate, like, over the middle. Like, he can't, not outside, not short, not even short and outside, right?
No.
Like, and I would say he does have a quick release when it's a short ball. Like his release, it's quick.
He puts nothing on his throw.
Right. Right. So I'll give him that. But to say that he's elite, I mean,
you can't tell me the quarterback who missed wide open Kyle Juszczyk up the right sideline in Tennessee is an elite accurate thrower. Like that was one of the worst misses I've ever seen.
Right.
So with Jimmy, the reason he has the completion percentage he has is because he doesn't throw low percentage throws. That wasn't even that was a freaking layup. But he doesn't throw down the field. So everything is a high percentage throw. And Kyle gives him some really high percentage throws. And he still gets picked off a ton. If Jimmy were this good, the Niners would throw the ball a lot because they have a great tight end, theoretically, when healthy, a great wide receiver, a terrific number 2 guy. But no, they run the ball more than any team except Seattle. Brian Windhorst voice. Why is that? Why is that?
Yeah.
Why do the Niners have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, but they lead the league in rushing attempts? Why is that? Because of Jimmy and his limitations, because he does nothing elite. No, he does something elite. He's so good at handing off, man. Sometimes you think he's going to hand off with his left, but then he's like, oh, right. Oh. He might be the first person ever to do a behind-the-back handoff. I think he could do it. He should try. But, yeah, that's his elite trait.
Right.
Oh, and his command of the huddle. The way he gets in that huddle and commands it, it's breathtaking.
And then you're like, Jimmy, you can't throw to the linebacker. And then he's like, hold my beer.
Hold my beer.
Yeah.
His ability to never take responsibility for any of his mistakes is elite. Jimmy, what happened when you threw the ball directly to the linebacker for the 10th time this year? Well, we really got to be better in that situation. You know, we got to run the route better. We got to block better. We got to be. Nah, man, you got to see the linebacker. Yeah, no, that's elite. Hold on, we got a comment, and it is from Irfan Mirza. Silver also said that Jimmy has elite arm talent. He did. Elite arm talent.
Elite.
I'm sorry. Drew Brees had elite arm talent. Jimmy Garoppolo puts nothing on his throws. He has terrible footwork. His accuracy is largely a function of not throwing down the field and having great receivers, and Kyle Shanahan, and elite arm talent. I mean, elite arm talent is someone who can throw all over the field, not just in one little area. My opinion. Maybe he used to have elite arm talent at some point 7 years ago, but not anymore.
But even if you look at his draft profile, his draft profile was never elite arm talent. It was never that. I would never, at no point in his career was he ever had elite arm talent. I think he's had a very, I would say his short ball release is elite. That's the only thing I would say that's elite about him is the quick release. But outside of that, I don't think.
But he compromises so much to have that.
Absolutely. No, right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, everything. So great. Take that quick release and take it to Cleveland, please. I'm tired of it.
Jamarcus Russell had an elite arm. Like he had one of the biggest. He had an elite arm.
JT O'Sullivan had a super quick release. Super quick.
But it's not.
JT. All right, moving on. More from Mike Silver. Mike Silver insinuated that Deebo Samuel's anger and his trade request, his burning desire to get paid now, is at least partially or maybe primarily a result of the quarterback's switch, in the sense that Deebo knows that Garoppolo can get him the ball and will do it a lot, and maybe doesn't have that confidence in Trey Lance. That's exactly what Mike Silver insinuated. What do you think of that? He even said, look, I haven't heard this. This is just, me sort of putting the tea leaves together. I really look forward to getting in the locker room so I can find out more about this. He even said this is a theory, but he thinks it pretty much makes sense. He was very confident in this theory.
I think that he's partially right in the sense I do think the quarterback situation does have to do with something why Deebo is angry. I think Deebo wants to get paid, and because of the quarterback situation, there's not money there to pay him because he can't afford to put the new Deebo contract on the roster. Deebo is upset because he wants to get paid. It has nothing to do with who the hell the quarterback is. He wants his money. That's why he's upset. And I'm not texting Deebo or anything, but I'm pretty confident that that's the issue. I don't think it has to do with Trey Lance. I don't think it has to do with Jimmy. I think he just wants to get his money.
Look, I don't know. Maybe Silver knows something. I'm not discounting this. Maybe Silver knows something. Maybe Deebo feels like, look, Jimmy's limited, but it works between us. And I put up great numbers with Jimmy. I'm a little nervous to see what this is going to look like without him. Maybe that's true. But if that's the case, Deebo, let me just point out to you that the reason you have to play running back so much is because of Jimmy. You can't win with Jimmy as your quarterback if you're playing wide receiver. You have to play running back with Jimmy there. That's just the facts. You may not understand that, but that's true. And the reason you can't win with Jimmy playing at wide receiver with Jimmy as your quarterback is because you can't trust him to throw the ball more than 25 times a game. He's going to keep forcing that ball to you on those slants, and one of those is going to get picked off by a linebacker or safety. Kyle doesn't trust him. So you keep running the same slants. That's great. You're great at that. But with Trey Lance, you're going to get the ball near the sideline sometimes, down the field sometimes. I think actually he's going to get you. He's going to be like Magic Johnson entering the Lakers and just making everyone's jobs easier. All of a sudden, everyone's going to get these layups, and your layups are going to be 30 yards down the field as opposed to catching the ball between three guys, 7 yards past the line of scrimmage, and then breaking 4 tackles. Like, yeah, you can do that. That's amazing, man. But I really think Trey's going to make your job easier. As long as you can catch the ball, you can catch the ball, right, Deebo?
And he probably make your career. You may have more longevity with him because you're going to be having less contact.
Yeah, I really feel that Trey Lance can do for Deebo what Matthew Stafford did for Cooper Kupp. This idea. Romanticizing what Jimmy brings to an offense and his fit and this and that. It's like romanticizing Jared Goff, and no one does that for Jared Goff because it's ridiculous. But they do it for Jimmy because he's just so, men always say this, and my wife always rolls her eyes like, why do they? He's just so handsome. He's just such a good-looking guy. It's like, what does that have to do with anything? My wife, she always hears, she's like, oh, here we go again. Men love Jimmy Garoppolo, and they always talk about how I don't get it. Why? I don't know what it is. It's very weird. And my wife is always, it makes her laugh. Anyway, people talk that way about Jared Goff. No one said, oh, what a face. We want that face. He's just handsome Jared Goff. And no one romanticized. Well, Cooper Kupp. When you take Jared Goff off this team, Cooper Kupp isn't going to get the balls. Like, what a joke. Anyway, I think that's exactly how I feel about this. Maybe Debo disagrees. I think probably being a little, I don't know.
I think
if Kyle doesn't express confidence, then how's anyone else in the team going to express all-in confidence in Trey, right? Kyle, you set the tone, bud. Andy Reid set the tone as well in a different way. All right, more. The last insinuation from Mike Silver. This was right off the bat. This was when he said, was making the case why Trey Lance should not start. He was saying, look, this is a win-now team. And he said, George Kittle, you don't know that's not English. He said, George Kittle, you don't know how long he's going to do this. Going to turn 29 this year. Really casually said that. And again, this is Mike Silver, not someone who deals in conspiracy theories. He has a wealth of information, too much. It's all off the record, and he has to present them a lot of the times as thoughts, opinions, things he didn't hear. But really, this guy knows what he's talking about. George Kittle might not play much longer. Wow! News to me. Buy or sell that one?
I'd buy it. I mean, George Kittle's got his hand in. He likes wrestling. He's dabbled in that. I see him on commercials. He's on commercial with his wife, so he's got his hands in different things. The modern football athlete does factor in health. So he might look at it and be like, "Do I really want to continue with playing this sport?" I'd rather just take my money, live the rest of my life. I can dabble in wrestling, maybe, even though that there are injury issues there too. I've got options. I mean, look at all the money that Fox and Amazon and all of that are putting out to NFL personalities. Now he probably not going to get that Tom Brady contract, but George Kittle does certainly have a personality. He has enough personality to warrant probably a sizable.
Greg Olson's getting jobs, right? I mean, yeah. Kittle could, yeah,
probably a sizable contract. Yeah,
I would think so. To me, this makes sense. I mean, I don't know why you would assume any player would play deep into his 30s. They have to be a real throwback type because the studies are in. You really shouldn't be playing football that long. There's brain injury concerns, concussion stuff, probably less in WWE. He definitely does have a second career lined up. He could be a very marketable wrestler. And I'm looking at guys like Calvin Johnson. He retired at 30. So if I were to say, okay, 2022, do you think George Kittle will be playing football in 2025? That would be
3 years.
3 years from now.
No.
I say no. Hey, God love him if he does, and God love him if he doesn't. No, I'm not saying it would be like nothing against him, man. I think, honestly, if you can step away at the NFL at 30 on your terms, good, you should. I mean, Gronkowski tried to, got dragged back by Tom Brady. Barry Sanders did. Calvin Johnson did. Patrick Willis did. I'm not telling him what to do, but no shame in it. I just thought it was interesting that Mike Silver said it like, what? What are you hearing?
I think Barry Sanders had a lot that retirement had a lot to do with the competitiveness too of that team. Like he would, I think if I remember right, he was interesting playing longer, but he wanted to do it elsewhere, and they were not going to let him go anywhere.
Well, I think what Mike Silver was essentially insinuating here was, hey, you don't know how much longer Kittle's going to do this. Are you sure you want to mess with the quarterback spot? Because what if you take a step back? He could be like, you know what? I'm 29. WWE's offering a lot of money, whatever. This is a waste of my time. Is essentially what he was saying. Like he could just walk away.
Yeah, he could.
Oh, okay. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, he could. He absolutely could. Something to think about.
If he did do
maybe
that,
they should have traded him this year.
If he did do that, though, I mean, he would be risking the Niners coming back to him and saying, "Hey, you know that monster signing bonus we gave you?
Ooh, yeah, we're gonna need a lot of that back.
Yeah, we're gonna need that.
We're gonna need a lot of that, but you're gonna need to, yeah. Hope you saved up." Okay, so that's what they talked about on this podcast. You can go listen to it for yourself. The number one question when you finish listening to it to me is who are they talking to? Because they keep mentioning the source. Cowherd's like, hey, I'm pretty sure we got the same source here. And at the end, he goes, well, Silver is incredibly well sourced on Baker, incredibly well sourced on the 49ers. It almost sounded like they had a little chat before the interview and discussed who their source was. If you had Mike, if you're watching, we don't know. It's a fun conversation. You know, it's the question on everyone's mind. So we're gonna speculate, and we don't know. But who do you think, if you had to guess, the source was or sources?
My best guess would be John Lynch.
It's almost too obvious, right?
Yeah.
When Silver was saying all the superlatives and elite traits that Jimmy Garoppolo has, like the only person who talks like that is John Lynch in the world. Right. Maybe Jimmy's dad or brother.
Right. And Colin Cowherd, he works at Fox, so he said right. So
there's a work connection. I mean, Silver, I believe, wrote a biography of Mike Shanahan. Probably has known Kyle Shanahan since he was 10.
And Mike Shanahan has been on Colin's show.
See, that's why I said sources. I don't think Kyle has the time or the inclination to talk to Mike Silver or anyone off the record. I don't think he would do that. I could be wrong. Now, Mike Shanahan has time. He's retired. He knows Mike Silver very well. I wonder. You know what I'm saying? And the thing with Mike is he's got his own agenda. Like, first he wants to protect his son, but also remember, he's not in the Hall of Fame. He won 2 Super Bowls, and the knock against him was that, well, I mean, you were just kind of a product of John Elway. Like, once you lost John Elway, you're pretty much a 500 coach after that. And I think he was always trying to prove that he could do something without a super talented quarterback. Ever since he lost Elway, he gravitated to quarterbacks like Brian Greasy and Jake Plummer, like mid-round backup types. And so does Kyle. I think both of them want to show that there's something so special about their scheme that transcends even great quarterback play. Neither one's been able to show that. And so maybe there's a little bit of that going on here as well. Like, you know, this Trey Lance guy is not going to be the solution to everything, you know. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, Kyle at least said, I think that he said something to the contrary to that, right? Like you want the elite guy because the elite guy makes everything easier for you.
Yeah.
And that's essentially when in the NFL. I mean, Bill Walsh didn't win anything without elite quarterback play, right? Like,
right.
You know, like you got to find that guy. You got to find the guy.
You really do. Yeah. So I guess, look, we're thinking Mike Shanahan, John Lynch, those two guys. I don't know, but I do feel that last thing, and Silver brought this up, the Mac Jones thing. He keeps bringing it because he was one of the guys, Silver, that reported the Niners were pretty much all set on Mac Jones. He was very confident in that and was making it seem like he'd heard. So again, he knows what he's talking about. The way I interpret that is, I think Kyle changed his mind at the last minute. I think, or maybe didn't make up his mind until the last minute. I think there was a Mac Jones camp in the front office and a Trey Lance camp. Maybe Kyle had indicated that he was leaning one way and then went the other way at the last minute, or was just keeping people on the edge of their seat. But I think a lot of people in the organization were surprised and maybe disagreed with it. And I think one of them, if I had to guess, would be John Lynch. He seems like a Mac Jones kind of guy. And I wonder about the dad too, because Mac Jones and Brian Greasy have so much in common, so much. Just seems like a Mike Shanahan kind of guy.
Or maybe it wasn't Lynch, but it was still someone within the organization. It was hard because I think that when if I remember right, when Kyle and John talked about that, they said they didn't tell anybody who they were going to pick. They told York at the last minute.
Or maybe Kyle had like given indications, made some arguments, and people thought he liked Mac Jones, and all of a sudden he pulled the rug out from Rich Gangarello or whatever.
Maybe he didn't even tell his dad, and maybe his dad was the source, and maybe he didn't even tell his. I mean, I think he probably would have told.
I think he just allowed a lot of people to think it was going to be Mac Jones, and I think a lot of people like Mike Silver still wonder why. Why did you allow so many people so close to you for so long to think it was going to be Mac Jones if it never was? That's strange. What is the motivation for that? I'm not saying that's what happened, but that seems like what they're saying is what happened.
What is
that? Why would they do that? Why would Kyle do that? I feel like when Windhorst did that for those 2 minutes, he pretty much summed up my entire career. That's what I do. Why would the 49ers do this? Let's talk about that for the next hour. That's what I do. He stumbled onto my entire business model.
And then he was right though, because right after that they started Utah traded Gobert and
I mean, really, he redeemed like 20 years of just a really forgettable career with that moment. In that moment, he became like a cult hero and a meme. All of a sudden, he's cool. Brian Windhorst was the least cool sports reporter in the world before that moment. Now he's number one. It's so great when you see a guy live long enough to become the hero, you know? Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Michael Silver. Thank you, Colin Cowherd. I hope people don't I hope they don't object to our objections too much. I mean, you put out stuff like that, it's going to start a conversation. Anyway, I respect their professionalism. Last thing I want to say though, and I had to hold this in. Man, Mike Silver, Mike, I love you, Mike. You live in Davis. Santa Clara is not that far away. You haven't watched Trey Lance practice very much, maybe a couple of times. I'm there every day. Hit me up. If you got an inside line to the Niners and they're going to tell you what, that's great. I respect that. I'm not knocking that. But cross-reference. They have an agenda. They're trying to trade him. Okay, they really love Jimmy. He's got 4 elite traits. That sounds a little over the top. I'm going to call Grant. I have Grant's number. Let me talk to someone who's also seen him and doesn't have that bias. And now I can sort of cross-reference and see what I believe. Don't just be super juiced that you have an inside source with the Niners and just repeat what they told you. Because, one, you could come to practice and watch Trey and Jimmy for yourself. Like last year, this all started when first 5 days of camp, Trey tore it up. I wrote that he's the best quarterback I'd ever seen in that practice field. And Matt Mayoko said essentially the same thing. So that was sort of like, that's not the narrative the Niners wanted. They wanted Jimmy last year. And that was sort of pressuring the Niners to give Trey first team reps, which they hadn't done yet. Silver comes, watches 1 day of practice where Jimmy was, okay, but he was essentially Jimmy, and then writes Jimmy's having the best camp of his life. Jimmy's playing the best football of his life. First of all, he didn't show that today. He's never shown that. You're not here. Who told you that? And just because they told you, it doesn't mean it's true. That's my one thing with Mike, man. Like, Mike, I love you. You're an OG in this game. You know better, man. Come on. Come to practice. I will show you what I'm talking about with Jimmy. Because if you were there every day in camp last year, you wouldn't have said he had the best camp of his life. You'd be like, that's what you would have been like. So I just don't understand. You got to remember, too, Mike, the Niners are trying to trade Jimmy, and they really are trying to gaslight the whole nation that he's really good, and they like him, but they want to trade him. So don't allow them to let you gaslight people too. And if you really were there and you felt that Jimmy was elite in those 4 things, fine. Come on, man. You don't really think that, do you? Anyway, that's all. So one thing I wanted to say about Mike, and I'm not questioning his professionalism or anything. I just feel like in this one particular thing, I don't know, maybe he just knows John Lynch super well for the last 30 years and just trusts him. And if John tells him something, it's the truth. Or he wants John to succeed. I don't know. It's almost like he's trying to help John trade Jimmy. Like, come on, man. Let John do that on his own. John got himself in this situation. He can get himself out.
The 49ers are fortunate that they have 2 reporters where they can use this to, I think him and Peter King are the two they're well connected with, and super like cool. Because didn't Peter King write something similar last year about Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes. It just seems like I don't know, but it seems like when times get tough and it's time to, when the narrative is getting away from the 49ers and it's time to get control of that again, John Lynch calls his old faithfuls. You know what I mean? It just feels transparent, but I don't know. Please don't get me in trouble for speculating. I was just speculating. I don't know. I don't know.
How do you feel about Trent Williams being the first offensive lineman to be rated 99 overall in Madden?
Probably well deserved. I would think he probably should have gotten this a long time ago, and the fact that you gave it to him at 35 is kind of funny. Probably should have had it at 27, 25.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Probably because he was buried on
overcorrection
on the Commanders.
I'm not saying he's not a 99, but it took this long for them to figure out that he's this good.
Like But also, if you look at like, there's not been an offensive lineman that's been worthy of a 99 like in the last 20 years. I disagree with that. Like Joe Thomas was pretty flipping good. He was just on a terrible team. Like there've been really good offensive tackles out there. I just think people just don't give offensive linemen even the love. Like
that's true.
I mean, Quentin Nelson, like,
yeah, really, yeah. They're just throwing out 99s left and right over here to wide receivers, I guess.
Yeah,
I haven't played Madden since
like 30. Like, yeah. Although Jimmy's not a 99.
What's he? 70?
You would think Jimmy Garoppolo would be a 99.
Is he? 99 accuracy?
Yeah,
99 willingness to hang in.
I don't even think his accuracy in Madden is in the 90s.
Because it shouldn't be.
What's his injury rating?
On that note, that's our show. Thank you very much. From what I understand, there's going to be some sort of a decision in the next 4 or 5 days with Deshaun Watson. So, I mean, if Cleveland's going to make a move, it could happen in the next week. Let's see what happens. Coach, thanks for joining me. Everyone, thank you for being here. I'll be back tomorrow with Croc early in the morning. See you then.